Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters and dear friends. I want to begin by acknowledging the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to convene for this noble cause. All praise and glory belongs to Him. I'd like to express a heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed collaborators of today's event, Ulster Islamic Society, the Ali brothers, and of course our distinguished guest speaker, Brother Mohammed Hijab. Furthermore, I extend my gratitude to all of you attendees for coming today. Whether you are here in the pursuit of knowledge, seeking company of righteous individuals, or contributing to our charitable cause, may Allah accept and bless all our collective efforts. May this gathering provide us with a deeper understanding of how to support our brothers and sisters worldwide who are in dire need. Now, before we proceed, allow me just to give a quick outline of today's events. So following the conclusion of this introductory talk, Brother Hasan Ali from the Ali brothers will come up and introduce himself and his organization. After which, our respected member of our society will recite a few verses of the Quran to bring blessings to our gathering, inshallah. After which, the main talk will then commence. Once the talk concludes, a representative from IF will come up and appeal for your assistance in fundraising for our brothers and sisters in Gaza. After the fundraising concludes, we'll have a brief 5 to 10 minute break in which if anyone wants to go to the toilets, get any drinks or snacks from the back, or even go pray, inshallah, then you can do so during that time. Once we return as well, there will be a Q&A session. Further instructions for that Q&A session I'll provide just beforehand. After we finish our Q&A, we'll then have the conclusion of the event with our closing remarks. Now, throughout the event, we have designated a few of our members of the society right at the back, near the rear entrance. Should you require access to the restrooms or you have any general questions or queries, please do approach them for assistance, okay? Complimentary snacks and drinks have all been provided for you, so please don't hesitate to take any more, even if it's throughout the event. And our members are here to help you at any point. They can be identifiable by two parts, if they have a white wristband and a volunteer tag as well. So please don't hesitate to ask them any questions if you have. Without further delay, let's extend a warm welcome to Brother Hasan Ali from the Ali brothers. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan for joining us. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer. This is actually the first Islamic event that I've attended, and alhamdulillah I'm hosting today in Northern Ireland. A bit further away. Yeah. And I'm not sure what the environment tends to be, what the vibe tends to be in these kind of events in the north. I'm more used to events in the south, in Dublin area, which tend to be quite different. We have a greater Muslim community, particularly in Dublin. So I want to get a feel as to what the community is like, and I want to hear what the community is like. I want to hear what the community is like here in Belfast, here in Northern Ireland. So I want to say again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think that's a more accurate representation of the crowd that we have, but I want to try that one more time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan. It's an absolute honor to be on this stage hosting this amazing event and to be in contact with the team, the committee here in Queens University of Belfast, the Islamic Society here, and to be collaborating with Ulster University ISOC and in this absolutely amazing event. And we have a charity partner with us today where we'll be doing some fundraising. So I wanted to say it's an absolute honor for us to be here in the north to experience what the community is like right here. Talking about community, yesterday I was talking to Brother Kareem and I was asking about the brother who's going to recite for us today. And he mentioned that this brother, he is on the committee, which alhamdulillah is something that I love to hear, that we have members within the committees of these societies that are able to recite and they're able to present events like this. But when he mentioned the next fact, that he is a hafiz, I said, subhanallah, mashallah, that you have a gem within your community here in Belfast, and you have many gems here within your community, and we hope that this is just a piece of advice coming from myself, from a young person who, alhamdulillah, is in a position now to talk to youngsters, to talk to elders, to offer some practical advice. Always hold your youth close together to yourself. Never lose hope in your youth. Always hold them dear to yourselves. You never know what can come out of the youth that we try to acknowledge, and that we sow the seeds for the future. So before we begin, I want you all to join me in thanking and acknowledging the youth here in Belfast, and to support them in all aspects of their lives, their worldly lives, the hereafter, because inshallah they will be the future of the Muslims, not only in Belfast, but they will spread Islam and the message of peace around the world. So if you can join me in welcoming, in giving a round of applause to acknowledge the youth in the community here. Finally, just before we begin the recitation of Quran, as we usually begin our events, I do want to extend a warm thank you of gratitude, particularly to the committee and to Brother Kareem, who's the president of the Queens University Belfast, ISOC, because their team is something that is quite closely connected. And this actually isn't too common to see. Coming from Dublin, it isn't very common to see young people, because we're young people, we're kids in a sense. We're trying to learn, we make mistakes, but to have a committee, to have a team that is closely connected, that is what is going to allow us to stand, or to allow us to hold the community on our shoulders. So before I begin and introduce the brother to recite Quran, I would like you all to help me in thanking the committee in Queens University of Belfast, the ISOC here, and all the volunteers who are helping to make this event possible today. Jazakumullahu khair. My dear brothers and sisters, it is an absolute honor for me to welcome and to introduce Brother Osama Jamal, who is a fourth-year student in aerospace engineering. Very interesting. He is a senior advisor of the Queens University Belfast ISOC. So without further ado, I would like to welcome him to the stage to recite Quran to open our event today.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سل بني إسرائيل كم آتيناهم من آية بينة ومن يبدل نعمة الله من بعد ما جاءته فإن الله شديد العقاب زين للذين كفروا الحياة الدنيا ويسخرون من الذين آمنوا والذين اتقوا فوقهم يوم القيامة والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه وما اختلف فيه إلا الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات بغيا بينهم فهدى الله الذين آمنوا لما اختلفوا فيه من الحق بإذنه والله يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Osama, for that beautiful recitation. May Allah allow you to become a beacon of hope and light and guidance wherever you go. and may He allow you to be of those who are closest to Him and closest to the prophets in the message that you send to people. May Allah accept his family and allow them to be a means of guidance wherever they go. Before I introduce Brother Hijab, there's one anecdote that I wanted to mention regarding Belfast, and I'll keep it short, but I did want to mention this because I believe it was in 2017 that I came to Belfast. I was invited to do an interview in Queens University of Belfast for the medical degree. Now, your prestigious university graciously rejected my application, but we don't need to focus on that at the moment. But I wanted to focus on another aspect of it. During that trip, we went to the Belfast Islamic Centre. I believe it's still in the same place. So you go up the stairs, it's kind of in the city, and the prayer room is upstairs, and you kind of turn right, and then you have the Qibla in that direction. And I went inside with my dad, and I experienced something that I never experienced before that moment, and I never experienced after that. And it might be shocking to you when I explain what this is, but this is something that we really need to understand. There's a huge lesson for us there. I came in with my dad, and everyone was looking at us as if we're aliens. Now, I understand that we're coming from the south, and it's a different situation here in the north, but it wasn't a negative issue. It wasn't like, oh, who are these people? They're not supposed to be here. It's kind of strange. Rather, they were looking at us, and they were happy to see us. You could see the beaming smiles everywhere. And after the salah, everyone came up to us and they hugged us, they gave salam, they asked, what's your names, where did you come from, why are you here in Belfast? And it reminded me of what I understood of the situation in the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. That anyone can come, you have that open environment. I love to mention one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and just to quickly refer to it. A man came to the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked, Ya Rasulullah, make zina halal for me. Give me permission to commit zina. If anyone comes up to us, even the youth or the elders, anyone, you'd push them away. That, how can you say to make zina halal? You're asking the Prophet ﷺ. And the Sahaba were uncomfortable about this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, come close. He made dua for him. He explained the situation logically. And he explained that to this person. So I felt that kind of emotion when I was in the university, in the Islamic Centre there. But another aspect which is extremely important, perhaps you're generous towards your guests, you're welcoming towards your guests, but there might be a different situation within your own team, within your own communities and families. I also witnessed something that I never witnessed before and I never witnessed after, and that was there was an elderly man. There was an elderly man, he came and he gave the adhan. And then he came back and he stood beside this young, talented individual, beaming with youth and zealousness for the religion. He stands beside him and they start cracking jokes. They start joking with each other and they have that camaraderie between them. That was something I never saw before. I thought there's something wrong. I'm not supposed to be here. Something's going to happen. Someone's going to come from behind the stage and it's going to be like, ha, gotcha. But subhanAllah, that environment isn't supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be the case that this is so strange for us. This should be the case that this is normal for us in our communities. Now, I do want to acknowledge perhaps some of the youth here might say that, no, that's not exactly my experience with the community here. I understand we make mistakes. I understand not everything is perfect. But I hope that the community is something like that. I hope the community is one that encourages each other, that uplifts each other. And talking about uplifting, we have a very special guest with us today in Brother Mohammed Hijab. Uplifting because he's quite tall. That was supposed to be the joke there. You're supposed to laugh at that. So to introduce Brother Hijab, he is an author, comparative religionist, and philosophy of religion. He's also the co-founder of the Sapiens Institute and a researcher and instructor for the organization. He has a bachelor's in politics, a master's in history, and he has also acquired a second master's in Islamic studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies. Hijab has also completed a third master's degree in applied theology from the University of Oxford, where he focused on the philosophy of religion in applied settings. Hijab is now doing his PhD in the philosophy of religion on the contingency argument for God's existence. He has amassed a following of over 1.1 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, on his main channel. And before I bring Hijab onto the stage, I just wanted to quickly mention the YouTube channel that I started myself with my brother, which is called the Ali Brothers. Alhamdulillah, it's a great honor for us to be collaborating for this particular event with Queens and with the Ulster University Islamic Societies. The Ali Brothers is something that we set up last year. In fact, we set up in February of last year. And we have the QR code, if you don't mind scanning it and subscribing to the channel. I have Hasib here in the back. He's monitoring who's subscribing, so we need to increase that number. Otherwise, we have Hijab. He's just held hostage over there. He's not going to come onto the stage if it doesn't increase. So, yeah, I see some brothers there. They're doing it, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Very good. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends, elders, the youth of the community, we are in the presence of a legend. Yes, that's right. We're in the presence of a champion. Yeah, that's right, yeah. The heavyweight champion. He stands over 6 foot. He is hated by some, loved by many. But enough from myself. We'd like to invite Brother Hijab onto the stage.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's good to be here. It's the Zionists. We're talking about occupation. We need to speak about colonial occupation. We need to speak about oppression of Belfast by the British for all these years. Huh? It's only a matter of time until the people of Belfast come back and create the troubles again. No, I'm only kidding. I said to the, jokingly, I was saying to the guys, you know, we've had enough, the Muslims, of divide and conquer. You know, these guys come to our land all the time and they divide us and they conquer us. So I have to come to Belfast and do the same thing. I'm only kidding. But actually it's interesting because as I was coming here, I saw some Israeli flags. And I asked the people, I said, what's going on here? Is there a Zionist community? And they told me, no, it's not a Zionist community. What you've got here is unionists that just want to oppose what the nationalists do and everything. So because the nationalists are pro-Palestine, these guys they're just putting the Israeli flag. And I consider that to be a kind of colonial mindset, frankly. This is embarrassing. I mean, why would you put a flag you don't even know why you're putting up, you don't know the policies and so on? And I'll be honest, in Ireland we have what you would call really a stronghold of pro-Palestinian support. I know we're in Northern Ireland right now, okay? But nevertheless, even those people in Northern Ireland who understand and see what's going on, 30,000 people being killed, men, women and children, they realize that this is an atrocity which cannot be excused. In fact, if you think about the Troubles was a 30-year thing that happened here. And interestingly, there are lots of parallels between what happened in Palestine and what's going on, or has happened here in Belfast as well. The British mandate for Palestine started at a similar time to when there was independence in Ireland. There was independence in 1922. But interestingly, the Troubles, which lasted for about 30 years, only claimed the lives, and I say only in comparison, of 3,000 people. Now if you compare that to 30,000, we're saying that in 3 months, effectively, you had 10 times the death rate of what happened in 30 years in one of the most significant events of British and Irish history. Now that puts things in proportion as to the severity of the situation. That puts things in proportion. That 30,000 men, women and children in about 3 to 4 months have been killed, which is the equivalent of 10 Troubles. And the Troubles took 30 years. Now that is a very significant ratio difference. Unfortunately for the Palestinians, there has not been the equivalent of a Good Friday Agreement. There's not been the equivalent of some kind of resolution for the Palestinian people. In fact, there is no call for any of that. No one is even speaking of that in any serious way. Which shows you that there is a disparity and an asymmetry with how these Palestinian people have been treated comparative to everybody else in the world. How British subjugated, the British Empire subjugated these people and oppressed them by giving the land of one people to another people without the consent of the former. How they did that, and how that claimed the lives now of hundreds of thousands of people and displaced millions of people.
These are two questions and answers, because this is really where the value is in these interactions. But I will finish off by saying that which the brother reciting the Quran is a beautiful part of Surah Al-Baqarah. Because from our perspective as Muslim people, as Muslims, some of us will be thinking, so why is this happening? What is the purpose of this bloodshed? Why us? Why the Muslims? Because we have seen Afghanistan destroyed, Iraq destroyed, Syria destroyed, Bosnia, and now Palestine, Kashmir, the Uyghur Muslims, the Indian Muslims. There are so many. And the reason why is because, from a materialistic standpoint, the West can get away with it, so they will do it. There is no check on Western power. The UN and all of the other organs which attempt to be neutral, or at least espoused to be, they are fake. It is WWE match. That's what it is. It's a WWE match. The ICJ rulings, the ICC rulings, the whole thing is a hoax. I'll be honest with you. There is a conclusion which they've agreed beforehand. The Americans, if their horse doesn't win, they'll step in and shoot the other horse. But from our perspective, as Muslim people, the enemy must know that they cannot defeat us. Because, as the brother recited from the Quran, he says, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. That, did the people think that they would be left alone, and that they would not be tested with that which the people before them were tested with? That they were given calamities and traumas to the point where the prophets among them said, where is the victory of Allah? Where is the victory of God? And Allah responds, أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. That certainly the victory of Allah is near. So we have a promise from God that the victory of God will come. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when, inshallah. So let's open this up to questions and answers.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
The question I want to ask is, especially where
Just bring the microphone a bit closer to yourself.
Yes. Can you do that?
Nice one.
Where I live in North, many of the churches, mostly Protestant and evangelical, they quite, I would say, side with Israel. They're quite, not Zionist, but they would disregard Palestinian oppression and say that we need to help our Jewish brothers, our slave brothers. How would someone respond to that? I guess reason is why would they support them, especially if they would kill their prophet and disregard Isa alayhi salam? That's my question.
So, I mean, I find it interesting that in Belfast there are still these divisions. I was looking at the census data before I came here today, and I saw that people in Belfast did actually identify to a greater extent either with Protestantism or Catholicism, right? Like for example, I think only 17 to 20% of the population consider themselves to be irreligious in Northern Ireland, in fact, all of Northern Ireland, which is less than the numbers you would find in England, for instance, or other provinces of the United Kingdom. This indicates something interesting. I think that people have attached their identities with these labels, okay? And so anything antithetical to their identities, they oppose it almost as a psychological knee-jerk reaction. But if you probe them and ask them, what do you actually know about the situation in Palestine and Israel? I doubt they even have the facts. I doubt that. It's just that it's us and them. It's what you would refer to in psychology as in-group and out-group dynamics. So it's become a thing now. Like for example, driving around in Belfast, I see the Union Jack flag. This is an unusual thing if you compare it with the rest of England. I mean, it's almost an overcompensatory attitude. But at the root of this overcompensatory attitude by some of the extreme members of the, if you like, the unionists and however they identify it, is actually a search for meaning and identity. They don't know what to connect themselves with. So they're connecting themselves with the people who are ambivalent or otherwise indifferent to such connection. Like if you go and ask someone in Birmingham or London, what do you think of the situation in Belfast and how would you rate it? They wouldn't even know where Belfast is on the map. Frankly, I promise you they wouldn't know where Belfast is on the map. They wouldn't care whether these unionists wanted to be part of the United Kingdom or didn't want to be part of the United Kingdom. So I think now we need to show these people who are using this kind of identity politics the frivolity and the capriciousness of their identification politics. That is so irrelevant. And if you ask these people who, for example, I have a hunch, although this is not backed by census data or whatever, but I have a hunch that even if you go and ask these so-called Protestants, right, if you ask them, what do you actually believe in terms of religion, right? I think a lot of them wouldn't even identify with Christianity. I think they'd say that, I don't know if I believe in God or not. I believe I'm an agnostic or something like that. A lot of these people, they are, like Richard Dawkins famously and interestingly said, he's a traditional Protestant. He's Protestant by tradition, by convention, but he's not actually Protestant, of course, he's an atheist. I was speaking to the guys about this. I said, look, this whole issue here in Northern Ireland is to do with Protestant and Catholic. There's only one way to solve the issue, as if they all adopted Islam. So that will solve the issue, you see. No, but honestly, in terms of how I would respond to these people, is by probing them and letting them reveal their own ignorance in so doing. So tell me what you think about what are the differences between Protestantism and Catholicism. I mean, ask a Protestant, give me 5 differences between Protestantism and Catholicism. If I went and asked the people who identified as Protestant in Belfast or anywhere else in Northern Ireland to name me 5 differences between Protestantism and Catholicism, my hunch is that they will not be able to do that. That's my hunch. So the word Protestant for these people hasn't got as much religious value. It has more identity value, political value. Once you expose that to the interlocutor and you let them see the blindness of their own belief and the blatant tribalism, blind tribalism that they allege, I think that will be the first step to breaking and deconstructing their unwitting and blind allegiance to a country which they don't even know, they don't even know why they're supporting it, and so on and so forth. That's what I would do with them. I've asked them questions about their identity to probe and to explain what they actually believe. You'll be surprised about the ignorance that is on display. That's what I'd say. Okay, any questions from the sister side?
Salam, my question is to you is what personal experience made you develop an interest about speaking in Islam?
Say that again, sorry.
My question is what personal experience made you develop an interest in speaking about Islam?
Yeah, so what personal interest is, obviously I feel passionate about this because in terms of Islam, it's a religion I actually tried to discover myself when I was younger. Living in the West, you're bombarded with a lot of information, a lot of different worldviews. And I consider Islam to be a competing worldview with all other worldviews, including the liberal worldview, the classical liberal worldview, including Christianity, including atheism, if you even want to call that a worldview. I don't think it is even a worldview. And so on and so forth. So I wanted to compare and contrast. And when I was younger, well, maybe 13, 14-year-old, I was looking and comparing and so on. And so when I came to a firm belief in Islam, to be honest, if you want something and you think it's good for yourself, if you're not a selfish person, which I hope I'm not, I mean, my wife would disagree with me on this point, but if you're not, at least you want to share, this thing. So, me speaking about Islam is simply me trying to share that which worked for me. Like, for example, if there was a diet program or a gym program or something that really, or I watched something or read a good book or something, and you want to make someone feel the same good way that you felt and have to incur the same benefit that you incurred, it's only right that, you tell them about that thing. Likewise with Islam. So that's personally how I came to that particular, or why I started doing public speaking on Islam. Should we go back to the... Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Back when I first subscribed to you, you only had like 30,000 subscribers, and now...
So you're one of the loyalists, no pun intended.
Alhamdulillah. But yeah, so my question is about the different approaches to the whole Gaza situation. There are like certain Muslim speakers that basically believe that when it comes to approaching the Gaza situation, we should focus on ourselves first of all. We should like make ourselves better Muslims, focus on Salah, Siyam, all that sort of stuff. And then eventually Allah will, give us Al-Aqsa. Allah will give us Palestine. But then you also have the other side that thinks, no, we need to do more. We need to get involved in politics. We need to, advocate more. We need to do this and that. So my question is like, are we supposed to pick one side? Which one's the right side, or are we supposed to have a mix of both? Or what is it we do?
Well, I mean, the Prophet Muhammad said, "Aqilha wa tawakkal." He said you have to first tie your camel and then have tawakkul. So if you try and remove al-asbab, or the idea of causation, then maybe they should employ the same reasoning, these people that you're speaking about, to every other field of their life. Why don't they just not work, for example, and maybe the money will come to them? Why do they not go to school, maybe the degrees will come to them, and so on and so forth? Clearly what you're referring to, frankly, is a brand of Islam which is both in Salafism and Sufism, which claims an apolitical dimension. So it tells you that really the way you should interact with politics is not to interact with politics. And you find people both from the Salafi side and from the Sufi side who espouse this kind of reasoning. And the reason why they espouse this kind of reasoning is simply because either they have been paid to do so explicitly, and there is a paper trail. I mean, you can easily find, I'm not mentioning any names or any organizations at this stage, but I can easily tell you who's paying them to say that and how it's connected to some government, which is connected to the United States. So effectively they are just enacting the United States interests, because of course the United States would want that to be the case. So for example, Madkhalism. Madkhalism is a strand of Salafism, okay, which is apolitical in nature. It's secular, effectively. It is a secular Salafist strand, which seems like to be a contradiction in terms, or a paradox. So they'll say, do not get involved in politics in any way, shape or form. And if you do, it's khuruj al-hakim. You're doing something, you are khariji, in fact. They will label you as somebody who's a rebellious person. You see? This is how far it can go. I don't know if there's any Methodism in Belfast, I hope there isn't. I hope it hasn't come this far. Are there any Methodists in Belfast? Does anyone know? Just a few. Hopefully we need to get rid of them. We need to get rid of them and the British at the same time. But this strand of Salafism is promoted by the United States of America explicitly. In some of the reports that say, the RAND reports and so on, that says you give them money, give these people money, they are doing our will. And so you can see the paper trail, and now they've been exposed more than anyone else, I think, these people, because their ideas are actually quite troublesome. If you say that, well, the reason why you're in the situation that you're in, and some of them will go as far as to say this, right? The reason why you're in the situation that you're in is because you haven't been a good Muslim. And they would even specify and say the Palestinians, they were like that because of their own sins and they're being punished by Allah, and the only way they can come out of it is by turning back to Allah. But if you think about what they're saying, then what about the Zionists? Are they being rewarded then? Because this is almost a prosperity gospel type of thinking, because there is a group of Christians called the prosperity gospel. I went to Nigeria one time and I saw them. They claim that the richer you are, yes, that you're getting this money from Allah, from God. So you'll see the pastor has a massive house and so on. I went to a place in Ikeja called Banana Island, okay? And the guy was telling me in Banana Island, this guy has a pastor's house, because they believe in this prosperity kind of Bible stuff. The worst thing about this thing is that you wouldn't be able to explain how the prophets went through tribulation. If it's the case that the only reason why somebody would be punished is because of their bad deeds, then why is it that the prophets are ashad bala, that they're the ones who have the most tribulation, the prophets, and then after them, the ones who are closest to them, and so on. So this is a warped kind of theology, which is really constructed in the kitchen of the United States of America. And they've twisted the arm of some mashayikh in parts of the world. They've definitely told them to do this, because it's not necessarily that Trump will go and meet Rabi' al-Madkhali himself. It won't be like this. Like Trump or Biden, you won't sit there with Rabi' al-Madkhali, one of the leaders of, and he say, listen, say this. It won't be like that. The way it would work is that it would go down a chain. And then, he would have to say whatever he's been told to say, effectively. And he makes no secret of that, frankly. So we have to say what the rulers say. And a good example of that is women's driving in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it was so haram for a woman to drive in Saudi Arabia. So haram 20 years ago. But now, the fatwa has changed. Why is it? Because the ijtihad has changed. No? Because Muhammad he is the one. He is the factor that made that change. He has the one that's made the halal haram and haram halal. So we know now from these kinds of examples and others that there's a political element, and it's ironic, in the way that these sects of Islam operate. There are sects of Islam, and that there's a political element in how this operates. And we should, now the Palestine issue has made people see through that in the clearest way possible. Yeah. So those who are telling us not to engage with the political system, whether they're Sufi or Salafi, because it's both. Some of them telling us suffer in silence and this and that, and frankly you're being paid by the UAE, and we can tell you the paper trail. I can tell you exactly who's paying you, and the thing of the elders there, which you're part of by name in public record. And you're saying don't get involved in this politics and this and that. And you were talking about the Syrians before and the Palestinians now. We know exactly why you're saying this. Okay, cut your funding with the UAE, cut your funding with everybody, and then say the same words. Yeah, sorry to say, I'm not convinced by these strands. There's nothing wrong with taking money from the UAE, so long as those people in the UAE or Saudi Arabia or wherever else you take the money from don't control what you have to say. At the end of the day. So you got to be careful about these people. There are Muslims nowadays who are controlled. They are controlled. They are controlled either by money or by politics or by fear. They're scared, I think. Do you know what the biggest crisis of our ummah today is among the ulama? It's cowardice. It's the cowardice crisis. Wallahi. There's such a cowardice crisis. You're scared to say something because if you say something, you go to prison. And some of the fear is justifiable, but some of it is unjustifiable. At least stay quiet. Don't come and say that the Palestinians this and the Palestinians that. They did it with themselves. Let them suffer in silence. Don't speak like this because you're written off. If that alim came out and done zina and it turned out that he done zina, it's better than for you to betray the Muslims like this. It's better. It's better if you didn't zina than if you go out and betray the Muslims in that manner, because how dare you betray 30,000 people that have been killed for a paycheck or for some kind of prison sentence that you're afraid of. So, to be honest with you, I don't rate these people at all. I have to say, this ألا في الفتنة سقطوا. That's why يتمثل فيهم هذا القول. This ayah, or this part of the ayah, that they have fallen in the fitna, it applies squarely and fully on them, 100%. It's a bit of a tirade.
Salam. So everyone condemned Hamas before Gaza war, which is first mortgage law. Why did people silently support the resistance, and what is resistance in Islam?
You see, when I was asked, for example, myself, do you condemn Hamas? The way I answered it was as follows. I said, wherein it can be proven beyond reasonable doubt that they've killed innocents, therein I condemn them. Now this wherein, therein construction, for example, is a condition. And for me, it's absolutely fair and fine. Because we can condemn any action that has been done by any group of Muslims that have betrayed or gone against the actions of or the prescribed actions of Allah and the Messenger. And this was done by the Prophet himself. When Khalid bin Walid, who was one of the Sahabis and companions, when he killed some innocent people, he did that. What did the Prophet say? He said, "Ana bari'un mimma fa'ala Khalid." Hamas actually, they made a public statement recently. I don't know if you saw it. It was like a document of 20 pages, and they admitted there were some people that were killed. And they said, this is not intentional and this and that. So even them, in a sense, they have to admit there were some mistakes that were done. Okay? And if you are not concessionary at all when you're speaking to an interlocutor, then you'll be seen as unreasonable. You see? But then, if we're being honest, what is being alleged of Hamas is in most part, in my opinion, fabricated or over-exaggerated. It's fabricated, fully fabricated, or over-exaggerated. For example, the numbers that have been said of the people that have been killed, 1,200 people. 1,200 people. In the beginning it was 1,400 people. And they said there were 40 babies that had been decapitated. We found that there was, according to Haaretz and the IDF's primary source material, only one baby that was killed. So how can you go from 40 to 1? And this was a massive talking point for them. Then we discovered something even more egregious, which is the fact that we had primary source material, which can be found in this website called electronicintifada.com, very good website, where in Hebrew, there were women and men in the kibbutz, in the town areas where this happened, where the music concert took place and so on, saying that the ones who did this were in fact the IDF themselves, that we saw them, and that this particular recording, which was scandalous for the IDF, was then removed by the Israeli government. But an investigation had been conducted by the police on the government, and this was said by Haaretz, which is one of the main newspapers. So I think that when you consider the actions of the IDF to their own people, especially considering something called the Hannibal Directive. Now, if you Google the Hannibal Directive is the idea, which is it's a taboo topic, no one can speak about it, that the Israeli army would be willing to kill their own people for political aims. This is a surprising thing. It's called the Hannibal Directive. You can check it out, fine. The point I am making is this. Most of the things that have been said to have happened did not actually happen. And in terms of the resistance, according to international law, any occupied people have the right to physical resistance. So the question, for example, Piers Morgan and others kept asking, does Israel have a right to defend itself? The correct question is, do the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? Because according to international law, the answer is yes. And in fact, this is in the declaration that was first put by the UN Charter, that if a people are occupied, that they can fight back physically. So there is no problem The only qualm anyone can bring to the table vis-a-vis the resistance in Palestine is the killing of non-combatants, and that we would consider to be a legitimate qualm. That is a legitimate gripe. Someone said, okay, well, someone killed a child here, or someone killed a woman here, or something. She wasn't a combatant. I say that is not right if that happened. However, the general premise of a people in Palestine fighting back, from our perspective as Muslims, it's wajib actually, it is obligatory for that to happen. This kind of jihad, which is called jihad al-dafa, or jihad al-difa', or defensive jihad, is obligatory for anybody, man, woman and child, by the way. If someone comes and there's a woman, Palestinian woman decides to kill one of these IDF soldiers because they're coming into her house and maybe they want to do something to her or to her children or kill her, what blame is on such a person? There is no blame on this person. The only issue, as I say, is in regards to some of the innocents that have been killed. But then if we're going to count innocents, frankly, how could we even compare? We're talking about 30,000 versus 1,000. And of the 1,000 that you're talking about a third, more than a third of them were military personnel, which are legitimate targets, according to international law. They're all legitimate targets, they're military. The IDF is legitimate, you can kill them, especially if they're coming into our house, you shoot their head. No problem. According to international law, I would like to know what the problem with shooting the head of an IDF soldier in an occupied region is. I would like to know what the problem is with that. There is no problem. In fact, when I see them being liquidated, and I actually get some pleasure out of this. I'll be honest. And what is even more pleasurable is, even more than them being absolutely liquidated, meant to be one of the strongest armies in the world, and they could not handle a militia group, or a few militia groups, is when they're screaming in agony and in fear. Now, I've watched some of those videos on loop, and I laugh and I joke and I have a good time, because that's what they deserve. And in fact, they will get more than this. We believe they will be burning in the hellfire due to their actions. So this is absolutely, they are despicable people. They are despicable people. And so, I forgot what your question was. Yes, resistance. Of course there is a right to resistance. The only qualm anyone can have is against the non-combatants. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, welcome you to Belfast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Jazakumullah khairan. I will start from where you finished, the right of resistance. Of course, it is, and this is, I think, in your speech, you touched why they do this to the Muslims everywhere in the world. Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine, and so on. In my opinion, they do it for one reason, because the only resisting people now in the world are Muslims. Because of Islam. Islam is the religion, and Quran is the book of resistance. Wherever it is about fighting injustice, fighting oppression, fighting back, not holding, not standing. Don't take just aside and stand to the side and keep silent like these madkhalis, alhamdulillah, we don't have many of them here. Because these madkhalis, by the way, for the brothers and the sisters, maybe some of them, I'm sure many people have not heard of them anyway. But they worship the rulers. They don't worship Allah. They are rulers worshippers. They are not Allah worshippers. By no means. To tell you just obey the ruler, whatever they do, it's fine. So Islam is the religion of resistance, and there is no other religion, or there is no other book, holy book, which will tell you that you must stand against oppression and stand for justice as the Quran. This is why they fight Islam and Muslims. This is the only reason. Because only the Muslims are standing against this oppression, this international oppression in the world. I don't want to take much of the time. I want to touch about Northern Ireland. You said Northern Ireland a few times. If you want to be in good terms with the nationalists or the Republicans or the Irish, you don't say Northern Ireland. You say North of Ireland. This is why they say. So this is, well, the other thing is about Protestantism, actually, when the question came. Protestantism is originally supported by the Zionism. There is a link between the two, and I'm sure you know better, and then you can't touch this in this issue. And finally, I would like just to talk about Palestine. The brother spoke about donation to Palestine, so please, brothers, support our campaign to collect donation for Palestine. I know some brothers raised the issue, this donation reaches or whatever. The brother in his speech was clear, or maybe not clear, I'm not sure. Southern part of Gaza Strip, the aid reaches and goes through, but with difficulty. But still it goes through. Northern Gaza Strip is much harder, unfortunately. However, we need to continue this donation as much as we can. And this is the minimum thing, I'm sure the brother maybe will agree with me. We can do, dua and the donation. Here we cannot do much more maybe. But please do that. We will put through some buckets for cash donations, and the brother has a machine, and all you can screen, take a shot of these codes outside when you are leaving and donate. All the money goes directly to the IF. IF is a reputable charity it has been established for Palestine for many, many years in the UK. Unfortunately, they had to change their name before because their accounts were frozen. It was the Interpol, I'm sure you know. Unfortunately, they froze all their accounts and they had to start with another new charity. But inshallah, it reaches, to the brothers. The question I have is, what about Muslim countries? Why Muslim countries and people in Muslim countries are so weak? We can see more demonstrations, and that hurts me. I lost so many friends in Jordan, in Palestine. I'm a Palestinian from Jordan, but in Jordan, to the, even political leaders, and what's called the Islamic movement political leaders in Jordan and other countries. When I speak, I tell them, what are you doing? Why are you standing? Like people in Jordan, my own people, my own family. How could they be allowing the vegetables and the fruit and the supplies to come from what's called United Arab Emirates, through what's called Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, to go and to reach to the occupied Palestine? Why the Muslim people are so weak and so cowardly, are not coming up as they used to be? I used to live there about 30 years ago, but in those years, we couldn't have imagined that would happen. That the supplies will go to the Zionist state, to this illegitimate entity. There is no way we could have allowed that. Why do the people are so silent? I know, of course, these madkhalis and these scholars are there, but why they are so silent, and how can we move them? Because without Jordan, without Syria, without Arabia, without Egypt, there is no way Palestine can be liberated, unfortunately. Our problem is not within the Palestinian border, it's within these countries. So what can we do here? What should people do there to change the situation?
So I think really and truly this is a geopolitical question. Because I'll be honest with you, I'll be totally honest with you. I think that if a lot of these Arab and Muslim countries had quote-unquote Islamist, quote-unquote, leaders, I think the same kind of thing would still happen. Like there would not be an action taken. And what's the evidence of that? The evidence of that is that took place before. I mean, there was, not to this level, but there was an attack on Gaza in the premiership of Morsi, the Ikhwan Muslimin, in Egypt. There was an attack. And look, you have, for example, in Turkey, you have someone who's a kind of Islamist who is protesting himself. I don't know in the sense of why he's protesting, because if you could take the decision yourself, right? But there's a reason for all of this, and it's a geopolitical reason. And the reason is that Israel is not acting in unison. Israel is acting with the backing of the United States of America and the EU, in particular Germany and some other countries in the EU. And so it's not a matter of, okay, well, the Arab countries and the Muslim countries going in and liberating Palestine. I think that's a little bit naive to think that that's what's going on. It's a matter of, okay, it's a series of if statements that these politicians make in their mind. And the if statements are, well, if we go to war, what's going to happen? And in their mind, they're thinking, if we go to war, then the United States of America will retaliate. Kind of like what's happening with the Houthis in Yemen. And if the United States of America decide to retaliate, what's our response to the United States? They've got the strongest military in the world. They're a superpower. In my view, there isn't actually a country from the Muslim world that can unilaterally stand up to the United States of America. There isn't. But it is either a combination of countries in the Muslim world. It doesn't have to be all of them. There's 56 to 58, depending on how you count, Muslim majority countries. It doesn't have to be all 58, because if you put all these 58 countries together, you have a standing army of 8 million people, for example. It would be the biggest army in the world. It doesn't have to be all of these countries. But if a group of them then allied with another regional power, probably Russia, then you have something which, from a realist international relations perspective, can make sense. But without the backing of another power like Russia, it wouldn't make sense in the minds of a politician, whether they're secular or Islamist. It wouldn't make sense in their minds, because it would be too high risk and too low reward, even notwithstanding all the deaths that have been committed. Whether they are Islamist or not Islamist, whether it's Morsi or whoever else is there. This is the situation. So it's a geopolitical question. Because look at Iraq. Iraq was a very powerful country. I mean, it was a global, it was a regional superpower. It was a very strong, look what it's become. And why has it become like that? Because of the United States of America. If Iraq had been allied to Russia, that wouldn't have happened to it. If that makes sense. That's why the Cold War was so significant if you study it in history. Because why is it that for all these years, from 1945 to 1991, there was no direct confrontation between the United States of America and Russia? There was only proxy wars that were happening in that time period. The reason why is because America understood the capabilities and feared the consequences of Russia. They don't have the same respect for anybody else in the world, almost, even China. They only give this level of respect, as it stands, to Russia. Now, there are some ahadith, I'm not saying this connects, but there are some ahadith that at the end of times, the Muslims will ally with the Rome. And there are only two claimants to the Roman Empire now, traditional claimants, which is the West and Russia, because both of them were part of the Roman Empire. So I think that this, if we're talking about, I don't think it's a matter of cowardice per se, because I think if you went and asked, I just came back from Pakistan, if you went and asked the people in Jordan, if you went and asked the people in Pakistan, if you went and asked the people in Egypt, these people are ready. The people are ready. But it's just the opportunities are not there. The people, I believe, are ready. I think if it was possible, for example, if Palestine, Gaza has an airport, and people can come from every part of the world, and Dafar al-Gharbiyya, the West Bank, also everyone can come in without checking. The Israelis know what that would mean. How many people do you think would volunteer to go and fight the Israelis throughout the world? Let's be honest about this. If we had a group like Daesh, ISIS, who are a rogue group killing other Muslims, yet we saw tens of thousands of recruits, and they represented 0.1% of the Muslim population. This cause represents 99% of the Muslim population. Imagine the amount of recruits you'd get for this. So I don't think the problem is with Muslims or bravery. I think it's to do with the geopolitics. And what I think is happening is, the situation of Gaza is more likely to take a turn, not due to any issue related with the Muslim world. It's more likely to, and this is just speculation, this is just opinions, you can throw them in the water. But in my estimation, it's more likely to take a turn due to A, the West's own decline, which we are seeing already in the United States in particular, and B, the rising powers of China and Russia. I think that these two factors have more to play in terms of what's going to happen in the Palestine conflict than almost any other factors. Because it makes it rational, from a realist international relations perspective, for other nations to ally, to be comfortable allying with Russia. The moment the Americans see this, even see the possibility of other nations allying with Russia, not even the actual allying of a Muslim country like Pakistan or Egypt or something with Russia, but actually the possibility of it, then I think you'll see the tone of the Americans will change completely vis-a-vis the Palestine issue. They won't be so pro-Israel because they know that this one issue could spark an entire, not just regional war, could actually spark an entire global war. If you look at how World War I started, it was, I mean, this might seem reductionist, but it's the killing of Ferdinand, Archduke Ferdinand. And they say this sparked everything in Sarajevo, in Bosnia. One event, because everything had been on the edge and the world had allied systems. These people had been allied together, these people had been allied together, and all it took was one catalyst. Now, if there is a restructuring of the global order, in a way that I've just suggested, then I think the Americans would realize that, because it's a chess game, they would realize it's happening straight away, and they would either have to act or bear the consequences. It's interesting sometimes that the greatest victories of the Muslims can be due not to the Muslims' efforts, but due to some other thing, some other extraneous variable. If you see some of the greatest victories of Muslims in history, in 1453, for example, the opening of Constantinople, a lot of it was due to the infighting that was going on there. If you see, for example, the Crusades, it was due to the fact that they couldn't bear the terrain, it was too long for them to walk, they couldn't eat, they couldn't drink. Even Ahzab, the Battle of Ahzab, the victory came as a result of some winds that came, and Allah, He sent His وَلَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُوَ. That Allah, no one knows the soldiers of Allah except for Him. Allah can do taskhir, can subordinate for us a variable which is outside the Muslim control, completely outside of it. And that variable could change the situation. And it could be the rising power of Russia and the declining power. For me, that seems to be the most logical way that there could be an exit from this situation.